By the end of this video, you're going to know why you need to be eating more protein while you're losing weight. And by the end, you may realize that you've been missing out on some potential results by not eating enough. What's going on? It's Aaron from AMFIT Coaching, and today we're going over my 3 top reasons of why you should be eating more protein while you're trying to lose weight. So let's head over to the whiteboard so I can lay everything out for you and you can learn why you need to be eating more protein while you're losing weight. So before I get into the 3 reasons, there's often a lot of controversy thrown around that a high protein diet can be bad for your kidneys or it's very unhealthy. Now, a lot of the research shows that if you're a healthy individual, it's perfectly fine. There's no adverse effects. Whereas if you're someone with some kidney issues or you have diabetes, then a very high protein diet may not be applicable for you. So you may need to be a little cautious or go talk to your doctor first. So if you're healthy, if you're fine, you don't have any health issues, then eating more protein will be perfectly fine for you. So the first reason of why you should be eating more protein while you're losing weight is fullness. The feeling of being full after you eat a meal. So let's get into why eating more protein is going to help you feel more full and how that's going to help you lose weight. So I'm going to link all of these studies below that I reference and talk about. So if you want to read further on them, then feel free to go in the description and take a look. Typically, when you eat a higher protein meal, you're going to have a greater feeling of fullness afterwards compared to eating a lower protein meal. Now, anecdotally, you probably know this as well. If you eat, let's say, a big steak, you're stuffed after. Now, in the research, they examine percentage of calories coming from protein. So typically in the research, on average, their highest intake is around 40% of the calories of a meal coming from protein. Some go as high as 75%, which is extremely high and a little unrealistic for most people. But even in the 40% of the calories coming from protein studies, those who were eating those meals were significantly fuller and more satiated than those eating a meal consisting of 15% of the calories coming from protein. And from my experience working with clients, 15% I would say is closer to the average intake of a regular person. So even if you just took your 15% and doubled it up to 30, you're going to feel far fuller compared to eating how you are currently. And when you feel fuller, you're going to be less likely to eat a little more after you actually have a meal. So you're going to be less likely to snack. You're going to be less likely to binge on something because you're full enough from your meal and you're not going to be craving something afterwards. Also, what some researchers have found is that eating more of your protein intake or a high protein intake at breakfast or your first meal of the day causes you to feel fuller more throughout the day. So you're going to be less likely to eat more food throughout the day. So if you're trying to portion up your food throughout the day, I would recommend getting more protein in at the start of the day versus the end of the day. So it's not known why eating more protein in a meal increases your feeling of fullness. There's a few ideas that have been tossed around. Some are a little contradictory. For example, one study will find one thing and then another study will find the opposite. One of the theories is that ghrelin will eventually be suppressed as you lose weight. That is the case, but it's not due to an increase of feeling of fullness from protein intake. It's just due to losing weight. So if you want to see that study, I can link it down below so you can give it a read. But one thing we can be sure with is that eating more protein will make you feel more full. And because of that, you're going to be less likely to eat more after you eat a meal and potentially during the rest of the day. So it's an easy way to eat a little bit less calories while not feeling like you're eating less. So the second reason of why eating more protein may help you lose some weight is thermic effect of feeding. So I'm going to abbreviate that. Mainly that's the energy required or the energy expenditure after eating a meal or a piece of food. So let's get into why the thermic effect of feeding of protein in itself may be a big factor in your weight loss. So thermic effect of feeding is energy expenditure following food intake. And for protein, it's a lot higher compared to carbohydrates and fats. So let's take a look so we can compare. So with protein, our thermic effect is roughly 20 to 35%. Now, if we compare that to carbohydrates, it's roughly 5 to 15%. So you can see if we have a meal that has a large quantity of protein in it, our thermic effect or our energy expenditure following that meal is going to be far higher versus eating a meal higher in carbs. Now that is shown in the research. A meal containing a higher protein amount, roughly 30% of the calories coming from protein of that meal, has a higher thermic effect compared to meals either higher in fats or higher in carbohydrates. So this 30% is a little bit lower than some of the studies that used 40% when we were talking about the feeling of fullness. But seeing as we get a good thermic effect at 30%, I would say 30% would be a good ballpark to start with. Ultimately, that is a lot of protein for most people. I would say that would probably be the upper range. Typically, that 30% would be around 1 gram per pound of body weight of protein. So getting in 30% of your calories from protein will help you burn slightly more calories throughout the day. Now, how many more calories can you possibly burn? Well, it's not a huge amount, but over the long term, it adds up. So there aren't a lot of studies looking at long-term thermic effects, but they can kind of extrapolate from the data and look at what might happen. But over the long term, you're going to have a higher energy expenditure per day, let's say over a few months or even a year, and that is going to result in more weight lost. So eating more protein in a day is going to help you feel more full and burn slightly more calories in the long run. So the third and final one is an increase in protein synthesis. Simply meaning you're going to build and retain more muscle. So let's get into why having more muscle is going to help you lose weight. So our third and final one is the increase in muscle protein synthesis. Now, this does many things for us when you're losing weight. So typically, when you're losing weight, you're most likely in a caloric deficit. And doing this while you're losing weight, you're most likely going to lose some muscle mass in the process. It's almost impossible to avoid. So increasing our muscle protein synthesis rate will actually allow you to retain more muscle mass. Meaning when you get to your end goal, you are leaner, you're going to have more muscle on you, so you're going to look better, you're going to be stronger, you're probably going to feel better, and your base metabolism is going to be slightly higher as well, meaning you can eat more food. So having more muscle on you is never a bad thing. So how much protein should you be eating to have this rate optimized? It's roughly 40 grams. It's going to be different per person, and eating more doesn't tend to be better. In some cases it may, depending on the person. For example, if you're 250 pounds compared to someone who's 150 pounds, the intake is going to be different, but there are some diminishing returns. So the sweet spot's around 40 grams. So if you can aim for 40 grams in a meal, that's going to put your protein synthesis rates a lot higher versus eating a meal that only has 20 grams of protein. So getting more of your calories from protein in a meal is going to allow you to retain more muscle mass while you're dieting, which is going to help enhance your weight loss overall. And that's the big effect of increasing our muscle protein synthesis rates. All you need is to increase your protein per meal. So if you liked this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up and click that subscribe button down below. Doing both of those helps this channel grow and keeps me putting out more content. And let me know in the comments if this helped you and how much protein per day you get on average and how much you're going to be getting now. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.